All right, folks, welcome. We're just about to get started. We'll have some people kind of coming in and coming out. But feel free as we're listening to the webinar just to drop any questions or comments in the chat. And if you want to get started now, feel free just to drop your name and where you're coming from and take a look at that. All right, got a good group coming in. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. I am Sarah Colton. I'm a recruiting associate with Reliant Mission, and I have the great pleasure of being here with my husband, Paul Colton, who is the pastor of mobilization and sending at Calvary Church. If you haven't been familiar with Reliant or heard of us in the past, we are a ministry organization that exists to partner with churches, nonprofits, and ministries. And we do that by helping those organizations expand their ministry base through employing individuals and training them to fundraise, and then also handling admin services like HR, insurance, those kinds of things, payroll, donor support. And we've been partnered with Calvary Church for a long time. Paul, can you talk a little bit about what you do at Calvary?
Yeah, I oversee missions at Calvary. That would include local community engagement, national church planting, international, our international partners, as well as international church planting. And so it's kind of a wide variety of things. Really, everything that we do here points to long-term impact in communities around the world. So we are eager to be a part of that in the short term, but also raise up our own people and send them there to live and to serve faithfully.
Amen. Yeah, well, the goal today is Paul and I are going to be talking about how to help churches understand why leadership pipelines matter, how they can expand your sending capacity, help as your vision is growing with your church, and also a little bit about how apprenticeships and residencies can help with that as well. Um, yeah, and how Reliant partners in that too. But before we get started, Paul, will you pray for us, please?
Yeah. God, thank you so much for bringing us together, Father. Thank you for bringing us together around your vision. Pray that the conversation would go as planned. And Lord, I do pray that you would engage lostness around the world. And I pray that you would raise up your church to take the gospel to those who've never heard it. So I pray for those that are in this room as they're thinking through sending, as they're thinking through developing leaders within their congregation, that Father, that will be the heartbeat once this call's over. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so as we get ready to jump into everything, before we kind of deep dive into the systems and processes, Paul, can you talk a little bit about when you first came on to Calvary? What was the burden or problem or the catalyst that launched the sending pipeline?
Yeah, so in 2018, we were coming off the mission field, and the Lord brought us to Calvary. Calvary had a vision to plant 150 churches in a decade. So uh, in 2016, Calvary turned 150 years old. And our pastor got up in front of the congregation and said, "What can we do today that will make a difference 150 years from now?" And his answer, honestly, it was the Great Commission. It was making disciples, it was planting churches locally, nationally, and internationally. If we can get a church in communities around the world that do not have churches, that church will bring change to that community. And so when I came on, our pastor was like, "Hey, we really need somebody to come in and oversee our international church planning efforts." And so I came in and I started helping Calvary think through what that looks like. And we started planning churches and kind of how that became a catalyst for our people wanting to be more involved is when our pastor put that in front of our congregation, our people started praying more for the lost.
Yeah.
They started praying more for unreached places. They started praying more for missionaries and churches that were being planted. So they were actually being pulled in to the vision. And what we saw on the other side of that, at least what I saw, is I saw more people who were actively involved in those ways, they were saying we want to be more involved. And so I always link it to Ephesians 1:13. When you're saved, when at salvation, you're sealed with the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is with us. This is God's vision. This is God's mission. When God's people start to participate, even if it's at the smallest level or in the smallest way, He's going to pull His people in deeper, and they're going to desire to be more involved. And we saw that. We saw them asking, "Hey, we want to be more involved." And so what we did was we started thinking through what does it look like to raise up leaders to be more involved.
Yeah, that's great. And I know X 150 just ended. Did you hit all the goals?
Yeah, we did. We ended up helping, plant around 171 churches. It was about 134 international, and then the rest were uh, across the Tampa Bay area and across the U.S.
Wonderful. So, can you talk to me a little bit about how developing that pipeline kind of helped you sustain the long-term vision that Pastor really put before you?
Yeah, so as our people wanted to be more involved, we needed to get them into an environment where they could wrestle with their calling. And for us, we were under the impression, or we had the assumption as we were building out the pipeline, that there are people in our seats that are called to go, they just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And so when you put God's vision in front of God's people, they want to be more involved. They just don't necessarily understand what that looks like. And so, uh, and like for us, we wanted to get them into an environment. We wanted to help them explore their calling, wrestle with their calling, identify their calling. And then we wanted to develop those who were called and invest our time and resources into those who feel like God was calling them to be a part of something bigger, maybe vocational ministry, maybe be sent out as a missionary, sent out as a church planter. Uh, we wanted to develop them, and then we wanted to make sure that in their final moments of deployment, they were being equipped with everything they need in order to go and faithfully serve. We always said we don't want them to be a drag on the Great Commission. We want them to be a contributor to the Great Commission. And we wanted to make sure our church was connected with them and involved in the sending process because these guys were being sent to dangerous places. It's Luke 10. Jesus said, "I'm sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves." Like it was something that we were sending our people out to be a part of some dangerous work. And so yeah, we had to develop the pipeline in order to prepare our people for that, and in order to get our church involved. And so I think that's one way we started to dig deeper into the vision. And I do think that's one way we started to change culture here, because we weren't just partnering with church plants or missionaries being sent. We were actually sending our own, and they were starting to plant. They were starting to go as missionaries. And so I think that's a little bit of, I think that answers your question. For me,
Yeah.
it was pretty cool to see what God did. Honestly, we just tried to, to build structure around the movement God was creating here. We saw around 24 sent within, the past 6 years overseas into a cross-cultural context. We've seen about 4 or 5 sent nationally to plant. And then we've seen others who have come through our pipeline who have taken ownership of different ministries in our church, in the community, or joined a church planting team. And so I think the biggest thing for me when we're talking long term, it's that shift from partnering with people who are doing it to actually raising up our own people and sending them out to do it.
Right.
That really helped our church a lot.
Yeah, something I appreciate about Calvary and the pipeline and what you're saying is how you didn't really focus on the staffing gaps. You focused on the individuals in pipeline to help them work out their own calling, knowing that that would fill any gaps in the church or in the ministry or in the vision that you had. Instead of, because I think it's easy sometimes to get blinders on and focus on on the problem instead of realizing that the pressure's really not on us. The Spirit's already working. We just have to
Yeah,
give people the opportunity to obey.
that's
So
right.
that's great.
These are God's people, right?
Exactly.
The assumption is God's working.
Right.
We just have to get behind and behind his work and trust that he is going to bring the fruit.
Yeah, I love that. So once someone is in the pipeline, I know pipeline's like top of funnel. That's kind of for everybody, right? It's very broad. It's just anybody that feels they have some kind of inclination to do more, to steward more in the church or anywhere. Once someone's at that point where they're kind of discovering, how do you help them identify and develop their specific calling?
Yeah, that's good. And honestly, we've learned some things since we've started this 8 years ago. Uh, at first, we brought them into an environment. It was the discover phase, and we created an environment that really uh, just brought them deep into Great Commission work. And so in our church, we started getting them actively involved, and we were basically putting them into an environment where they were exposed to the Great Commission over and over and over again. So when they came in, they were praying more for the lost,
Mhm.
and they were praying for those who've been sent. And one thing that we always like to say is, those things that you pray for, you grow affection towards.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a strategic approach to us, even though God's commanded us to pray and we have that with him, like that's available to us. Uh, I When you get your people praying for things that matter to God and they're doing it consistently, their affection and their love grows towards those things. Uh, and I remember having a church planter out of Boston come, and he was serving with us in India, and he came and he was doing a devotion with our team, and he said, it's amazing when I pray for my wife and when I pray for my kids, my love for them grows. That's how it works. And so if we can get our people praying for the lost and the sent, their love is going to grow for the lost and the sent. And the other thing that we did was we brought in practitioners. We bring in practitioners. Practitioners are individuals who are sitting in seats in the pews like they were, but they have made a decision to sacrifice for the work that the Lord has called them to do. They've made a decision to sacrifice for Jesus and to give their life to Jesus, not just their heart, but even their careers. And so practitioners come in and they talk about what God's doing. They talk about how the Lord's working in their ministry, the difficult times they're going through, but also the rewards. And when they hear practitioners speak, these practitioners are speaking from their passions. And these people who are in the room trying to figure out what their call is, like they're hearing somebody talk about how God is using them to fulfill the call in their life. That goes a long way. And I think in the church, in the local church, we've kind of lost that rhythm
Yeah.
of bringing practitioners in front of our people so that they can hear what God's doing. Man, it's when you hear what somebody's doing around the world and how they've sacrificed for God and the joy that they have when God works, that calls people into God's mission and God's vision. So that's a little bit of the environment that we're bringing them into. On top of that, recently, one of the guys that's joined our team has added a new phase in front of the discover phase, and that is the draw phase.
Okay.
And the assumption there is that if we can get God's people sharing the gospel and making disciples, then God is going to draw them into his mission. And so, how do they identify their call? They get active in God's work. When you start participating in God's work, he starts to confirm a call in you. And as a church, since we have this draw and discover phase, we have an opportunity to see how God is working in their life. And as they're discovering their call, we're able to look at them and even confirm their calling and say, yeah, it's time for you to move to that develop phase. We're ready to put more of our time, more of our resources in front of you. And honestly, that's where Reliant has really helped us is the development phase. That development phase has helped us provide intentional development to more people
Yeah,
because when you start opening up the floodgates, people are going to come. They want to be used by God. And so Reliant and the partnership that we have with you guys has really helped us create some more training environments that are intentional and that are specific to different ministries.
that's great. Yeah, on that note, can you tell me a little bit about Calvary Institutes? I know you've got your apprentices, residents, and
Yeah.
interns. They go through the pipeline as well. Is that right?
Yeah, Calvary Institutes is our training center, uh, preparing believers for a life of kingdom impact. Uh, Calvary Institute houses our internship, apprenticeship, and residency, and then the pipeline fits within Calvary Institute because that's our training hub. And so all training for interns, apprentices, and residents comes through the pipeline.
Gotcha.
Uh, and if you look at it from a 30,000 foot view, you've got develop or draw and develop. Our interns are really sitting right there in that draw or discover. You have draw and discover, and our interns are really sitting right there in that draw and discover phase.
Okay.
And then you have the develop phase, which is where our apprentices sit. They're still getting developed. They're still green. They're learning ministry. They're growing in their ministry and in their calling. And then our residents really fit in the deploy phase. We would be willing to hire those guys if they weren't called to go somewhere, but they're on their way out the door.
Gotcha. So interns are like top of funnel, then you've got apprentices,
Yeah.
then residents are like they're ready to be
Yep.
sent. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do
And
you
they're
happen to
not,
have, sorry, go ahead. What?
I was just going to say, we're not limited. That doesn't, anyone can go into the pipeline. It's not
Sure.
just limited to interns, apprentices, or residents. Uh, those are just pathways that we've identified as necessary for people flowing through. And so, yeah.
Gotcha. I was just gonna ask for a story. Do you have a story
Okay.
about any of your people that have gone through the pipeline and been sent?
Yeah, man, yeah, the Lord's been good with this one, and I think sending. Like I said, there was a saying we always on the mission field. We always said, "Follow the fruit." Where you see the Lord working, you lean
Yeah,
into that, and you get on board with what the Lord's doing. And sometimes that could be messy, but you don't always know what the Lord's doing. So we just started seeing God calling people out. One guy specifically, Michael Pasqualato. I love Michael. He's uh, he's a character, but he loves Jesus. And I remember him coming in, and he wanted to be used by the Lord. He felt like the Lord was calling him into ministry. And I went and I sat down. I had coffee with him, and he was really wanting to lean into more of the disciple making movement, work here in the Tampa Bay area. And he really wanted to impact the lives of the unreached. And so we talked, and I was like, hey, our apprenticeship sounds like a good fit for you. And our apprenticeship really tries to uh, cater to the individual coming into the apprenticeship. Like if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I'm called to youth ministry," we're going to build out an apprenticeship that fits with that individual and helps him grow in youth ministry. Well, it just so happens that we had somebody come through our pipeline about 2 years ago, just a normal church member who joined an organization called E3 Partners and was working the missionary task here in Tampa Bay. And he had identified 13 unreached people groups here in Tampa Bay. And I was like, Michael, we've got the perfect fit for you. I'm going to match you up with this guy over here. He's engaged in the lost. And Michael came in and just, man, they started going to mosques. They were sitting with imams in the mosque talking about Jesus. And as Michael was growing, as he was developing, he was raising funds with Reliant. Uh, he started engaging the South Asian community, and we had a ton of South Asians here in the area.
yeah,
And he just went out to a cricket field one day and started building relationships and ended up started gathering about seven to eight Indians in a home just talking through stories of hope, stories about Jesus. Uh, and and so Michael got real practical training. And I think one of the things that really helped Michael is one of the cool things about Reliant. Yeah, you guys help with the administrative load and taxes and all that, and that's one of the reasons why we did it. But one of the things that I learned after our people started raising funds is the fundraising component became one of our most valuable training methods because these guys would come in and they would be required to be able to cast vision that was bigger than themselves. Hey, I'm not just doing this to help me. There's a great commission purpose behind me coming on as an apprentice at Calvary, and I'm raising funds, and I want you to come and impact the nations with me. And so Michael really learned how to rally believers and mobilize believers to give to his apprenticeship. And what that did was that gave Michael an opportunity to interact with people on a regular basis. He learned how to pull people into his calling and into the
Yeah.
mission that God had called him to. And he learned how to recruit volunteers to come with him. And so, yeah, there are several things. There is one story too about Michael, just how he was learning to engage. When you're looking at like what we call the M-task method, entering into communities where
Mhm.
there's no gospel or very few believers. You're carrying through prayer. And so you're entering with prayer. And I remember Michael telling me a story. He was like, I went into this apartment complex and I was going to prayer walk and I asked God, I said, God, will you just send me somebody who is broken? I just want to pray for somebody that's broken. And he's walking around praying, and this guy stops his car, rolls down his window, and says, Hey, I'm looking for directions. Can you help me? Michael points him to the right way, but before he leaves, Michael was like, Hey, but before you go, can I pray for you? Is there anything in your life that I could pray for? And the guy literally looked at Michael and said, Hey, I'm just feeling really broken right now. And I was like, Michael, I hope you prayed for him. Uh, but
I
like
know he did.
that's the kind of stuff that we were able to replicate here. And Michael was able to bring people on board with him through his fundraising, but also, man, Michael is set up to go do this work anywhere.
Yeah.
And it comes back to we've got to get them in the pipeline, actively involved in things that matter to God, God's
Yeah.
work, sharing the gospel, making disciples, expecting God to work, and then we can work on some of the other things that need to be worked on. But really, that's the foundation. And so I don't. That was probably a lot longer than you wanted, but
No, it's a great story. I love Michael.
you
Yeah.
know how I can talk.
I
I
do.
just keep
It's all
going.
right. And I when I asked you that question, I had probably five people pop up in my mind that you could choose from that have gone through the apprenticeship with Reliant and have since been deployed either with the
Yeah,
IMB or some have stayed in the Tampa Bay area, some have launched different parts on the West Coast. But I think what I love about the partnership between Reliant and Calvary is, our senior pastor, Pastor Willie, he had such a solid vision in place, the X-150 vision. He's like, here's the goal. Like it's a big goal, it's God-sized vision, and let's just do it. Let's just start. And what I love about Reliant is that's all we needed to know. You know what I mean? That we didn't have to do, we weren't messing with the vision. The vision was in place. Reliant just came in the back end as a support, as a partner to basically help make it happen and take off the operational drag so you guys could just get going. But yeah, that was a cool story. I love
yeah,
Michael has a ton of stories like that in general.
he does, man.
So
He does.
I know the big goal of the webinar was how to start a pipeline. So if you could break it down bare bones into like first three steps for a church, even if they're a smaller church or they're just like, I have a big God-sized heart and I've got this apostolic stirring, but I just don't know what step one is. What would you say like the first three steps to take would be?
Yeah. First, pull your people or expose your people to God's mission. Hang on, let me grab something real quick.
Yeah.
So this is a people group card.
Okay.
This is an unreached, unengaged people group. Uh, and to our knowledge, there's no believers in this people group.
Right.
And so get your people praying for them. Get your people praying for them daily. This is small enough to put in their Bible. But remind them that, in John 15 or 1 John 5, 14 and 15, Jesus said, if you pray according to my will and you have confidence that and believe that I will give you what you ask, you can ask whatever you wish and it'll be given to you. And here's the reality. It is God's will for the nations to hear and believe.
Yeah.
Like Jesus came to seek and to save the lost, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is pray for the practitioners. Pray for the ones that are sent out. And so we have prayer cards of everyone that is being sent out of Calvary, and we're asking our people to pray for them. And remember, when you're praying for things, your affection is growing towards them. That's happening no matter what, especially when you're leaning into things that matter to God. And so that would be one of the first things. And then if you have some partnerships that are good partnerships that are in engaging lostness, uh, celebrate what they're doing and what God's doing as those things are coming. And as you get them involved and as they're involved on Sunday morning and over the weekend, like you have an opportunity to pull your people into God's vision. And once you get them engaged, you're going to start finding people who want to be more engaged. And that's the second thing that we would do. And I tell every church to do this. You start gathering for the purpose of solving the Great Commission problem,
Yeah.
the problem of lostness. All right, there's almost 4 billion people around the world who need Jesus. And when you gather a community together and everyone in that community is seeking to be used by God more, they start to feed each other. That creates an environment that it
Yeah.
functions like an accelerator or an incubator. And so you gather them together, you pray for the lost more, you pray for the sent more, you celebrate gospel wins when Jesus is saving people, and then you get practitioners in front of them. And then the third thing, uh, give responsibility. I served with a guy who used to say, if you don't give them responsibility, they're going to leave.
Yeah.
Like God's people
So
want to
true.
be involved in his mission. And when you don't let people do that, you inhibit their growth.
Yeah.
Like, and those are just three things that I think if you were to think step by step, hey, start praying for the lost and the sent, celebrating kingdom wins, get your people involved in that, start gathering around the Great Commission, and then third, give responsibility. I think those three things are key. And there's just another thing. That's not a fourth one. This isn't a fourth one.
Okay.
This is
This
this is
is
a
free.
freebie. Uh, don't fear leadership gaps.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we fear leadership gaps. And the reality is all the churches across the US, we're often trying to desperately fill those gaps rather than letting the Lord fill those gaps for us with people in our congregation. One of my favorite books is Gaining by Losing, just because it's all about the local church pushing out, right? Being involved in the mission. And one thing J.D. Greer says in there is he says you push out leaders to create new leaders. If you don't push out leaders, you don't create gaps. If there are no gaps, leaders will not step in. And
Yeah.
we can't fear those gaps. We have to be able to embrace those gaps and trust that the Lord has people in our seats ready to fill those gaps.
Yeah.
And so those are some things that just come to mind. It is hard to start. That's probably the first, that's probably the biggest step is
Yeah.
just starting. You're not going to know what you did. You're not going to know what you're doing.
And that's
Uh,
okay. Yep.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
Even when we do it wrong, God still gets rewards and he
There's
still
grace for
works.
that. Yeah. Yeah, and I
Wow,
think what you're saying, with praying over the people groups and the practitioners, it's essentially getting your people's hearts ready for a big vision. Just to not be
that's right.
like, hey, this is a person that you've never, a person, people group you've never heard of, you've never seen with numbers and languages that you don't know, but we're going to pray for them, trusting that maybe we can have a part in getting the gospel to them, even though they've never heard before. It's just, and then the same for the missionary. Like, this isn't just a missionary, this is a person that we're going to pray for. Maybe we can eventually join them on a short-term trip, but you're basically getting a big vision in place for people to be excited about. And then I love the just start, because that is so true for just about any big thing that's scary. You just have to start. Just start meeting, start celebrating gospel wins, encouraging each other. And then lastly, sending, pull people into the leadership opportunities, give them responsibilities and let them go with it. I love that. It's very practical.
And I just really quickly, we had 10 unreached people groups identified that we were praying for. And then we rotated those. So ultimately, there's probably about 30 we were praying for over the past 8 years. We saw about 18 churches planted in those people groups.
It's crazy,
And
isn't it?
so what we get to do is we get to bring those to our church and celebrate that. We're not just celebrating, like these are what we've done in the church plant. These are people now represented before the throne of God, worshiping his name.
Yeah.
Like this is fulfillment of the scriptures, and so our people get excited about that now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thinking of the apprentices that went through Reliance training. I just for context, I was also on staff at Calvary for a while as the international missions director, and those folks were some of my best recruiters for short-term mission teams too, because they knew how to cast some vision. They knew how
That's
to
right.
how to explain the need really well. So that was a gift too. Well, we're going to take some time real quick to do some Q&A. So let me pull up the chat. See some friends here. If anybody has any questions, you can post them now, or if not, that's okay too. We're going to be sending out the recording and the takeaways here afterwards. But while we're waiting for some questions, Paul, you touched on this just a little bit, but can you talk a little bit about how you identify leaders early on? Is there anything that, okay, if you ever came up to some, I know on all your trips, you always take somebody with you, like an apprentice, a resident, you're always taking a disciple with you. How do you identify those guys that you're like, okay, he's so green and he's or she, they're kind of a hot mess, but I see something in them, like they're gonna be one of the sent ones.
They say yes.
They say. Yes,
Uh,
people.
but then you put them in environments like Mozambique or India, and you see how they respond.
That's good.
If and then, like I said, I think the for me the question is, are they leaning into the two most important, well, not most important, but two of the most difficult commands to follow, which is proclaim the gospel to the whole creation and make disciples. For some reason, that seems to be the hardest for a lot of people.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so again, those are things that we're looking for them to do. And so the other stuff, man, the scriptures are working with them on their hearts, and they're growing. And I think when they're obedient, they tend to grow more. And so it's just getting them to be obedient with the scriptures.
Yeah,
With
that's
the
good.
scriptures. Yeah.
Mr. Mark just posted a great question. He said, how would you begin a pipeline if the senior pastor is not on board? Which that is a great question, because I know Pastor Willie kind of put it in front of the people first.
You gotta be very sneaky. Uh, yeah, I think that's good. And honestly, that happens a lot. Uh, I think deep down, pastors do want this. Uh, I don't know of a pastor who would say, "I don't want this." I think a lot of times the method is the tension. But for me, what I would do is just start doing it. And honestly, that's what we did here. You just start making disciples. Just start making disciples. Start a Wednesday night class that people can come to where you are saturating people with the Great Commission. Start a class where you're walking through the book of Acts, or start an evangelism class and just get people moving. There's things that I don't know any pastors that would be like, no, we don't want to do that here. I think a lot of them would be open to those types of things. And then you just start embedding these principles in those classes and in those discipleship groups that you're leading. Uh, so I've had the privilege of having a pastor that has embraced it and honestly initiated it. Uh, but we have had conversations and we do have meetings with other
Mhm.
churches where they don't have that from their pastor. But there's still opportunities for them to lead and disciple others in a way to where they are being exposed to global lostness.
Mhm.
They're being invited to pray for the lost. They're being invited to share the gospel and make disciples. I think if you start investing in those activities, you're going to have to answer the next question as well. I feel like God's calling me to something more. And then you're the one that's able to help walk them through that. But then you're also showing your pastor, hey, like this all started because we were praying for the lost and we were sharing the gospel with the lost. And so I don't necessarily have an answer for every pastor out there, but I do think that these are things that most pastors would receive. And then you're getting to a point to where you have to answer the next question. They're saying, "Hey, can I get more involved? How do I get more involved?" And that's a good problem to have. And you have the opportunity to take that to your pastor and say, "Well, this is my recommendation. What do you think?"
Okay, and then we've got a question from Chris Mills. What role do short-term mission trips play in the pipeline?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite parts because a lot of people will say short-term trips don't work. Maybe not a lot, but some do. Uh, the beauty is our mission department, we've identified the missionary task as the process for doing missions. So in anything we do, we have an entry strategy, an entry plan. We're prioritizing the gospel, we're making disciples, we're planting churches, and we're raising up leaders. And so this is our process, even for local missions or foster care and adoption. They're entering into a community and into relationships. They're prioritizing the gospel, they're discipling, they're pulling them into a healthy church, and they're raising up leaders to do the same thing. But for international missions, all of our partners would have a vision and their work would follow that missionary task.
Yeah.
So the cool thing is I get to put it in front of my church and say, hey, this is how we do missions. But look at this. This is how our partners, this is how we found our partners. They do the same thing we do. And then I get to pitch it to our members and I get to say to them, hey, look, Mozambique, our entry strategy is digging wells in a community that does not have clean water. And we're going to go to this village that's 100% Muslim. They have no water, and we get to put water in there and well, a well in there, and then our partners are going to come with us, and every day we're going to be sharing the gospel. And so there's an entry strategy. We're taking water in, we're prioritizing the gospel, we're making disciples, we are gathering for new churches into churches, and we're raising up leaders to do the same thing. Within 2 years, there was a church planted in that Muslim village. And those guys who went just to dig wells and to share the gospel know because our partners have the same vision we do that they're there for a week, but they're participating in a long-term vision.
Yeah.
And so the work that they did for a week, digging wells and sharing the gospel in this unreached village, led to a church being planted. And so later on down the road, like they get to celebrate that one of the churches Calvary was able to help plant in Mozambique was started because they were willing to use some of their vacation and go and actually do the work to dig those wells.
Yeah.
So every single partner we have, I get to go to my church and saying, hey, the entry here is medical. Hey, the entry here is VBS. Hey, the entry here, we're just going to go share the gospel like crazy.
Yeah. I'm going to add in real quick, Paul, with the apprenticeship program, part of the fundraising goal for the apprentices includes a mission trip, right? So they actually fundraise so that they're
Yeah,
able to go on the mission trips, which is part of the developing stage. So those apprentices and anybody in the pipeline that's in that development stage, short-term trips also give them an opportunity to explore that call if they have that
that's right.
restlessness, that feeling of, okay, I feel like I need to do something in India or Africa or different countries in Africa. It gives them that opportunity as well. So it's also
Yeah.
part of the individual's development phase. It gives them a chance to go explore that calling.
Yeah, and we require all apprentices to go on a mission trip their first year, and then they need to lead two mission trips their second year.
Yeah.
And honestly, anyone going through our pipeline, if they're in the development or deploy phase, doesn't matter if they're going to be a planner in the U.S. or overseas, they need to lead mission teams for several reasons. We have them do that. But that means it doesn't matter what setting they're planting or working in, they're going to know the missionary task and they're going to know how to engage new communities with the gospel.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Mark posted a question. We're at the, just so you know, Paul, we're at 142. So I know you have another call after this, but can you go into a little more detail about how you run the very top of the pipeline, discovery phase, and how often you meet, the agenda, etc.?
All right, go into detail about,
The top of the very top of the pipeline.
yeah,
Like the
the
just,
entry,
yeah.
how we run that. Yeah,
How often you meet and how you run it, yeah.
Carl's really building that out now, and he's doing evangelism trainings on every one of our campuses. He's actually got a really, really cool strategy where he trains the masses at Calvary or in different departments or in different ministries for a week, and then he sends them out for a week, day in the life mission trip.
Yeah.
And so they go to their workplace, they go to their school, and for a week they see it as a mission trip, and they're engaging their employees, their students, their coworkers with the gospel. And again, what we're doing is we're looking for the people that are getting excited for what God's doing. And we're asking, hey, like, you're really good at this, and the Lord could potentially use you to do more. Are you interested in that? And so that's one of the ways that we're kind of opening up the flow into our pipeline. Uh, Most of the time, and I think this touches on your question, Mark. Most of the time, the people coming into our pipeline are coming in because of a personal invite. It's kind of the way Jesus did it. He said, "Hey, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men." Uh, if a pastor goes up to somebody in their church and says, "Hey, I see something in you that could be very useful to the kingdom. Would you mind coming? I think you would do really well at this." Man, if you're sitting in that guy's seat, man, that's got to feel good to that church member.
Yeah.
Uh, and if they're wrestling with a call, and they might see that as confirmation, and I need to go. I need to go check this out and see what it's like. Um, but that draw phase, we're using evangelism to draw people in. And then we're getting them into that environment where they can explore their calling. We do have a calling cohort within the discover phase where one of our other pastors has been meeting with those who are in that calling phase, just processing with them, working through a book with them, and praying with them, providing that pastoral care as they're kind of searching and prayerfully considering their call.
That's great. Well, Paul, everybody, thank you so much for coming. This has been delightful. I love hearing about everything going on with the pipeline and just talking about how Reliant can partner. And but this has been so fun. So thank you for doing this with me. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I know, Paul, you said you've got a Senders Network coming up in October. So
Yeah.
I'll send the invite link to that to everyone on here. So if you want to sign up for that, you can. I know Reliant also has a residency summit coming up in Texas in October 19th through the 21st. So that would explain more about, you heard us talking about how Reliant partners with Calvary to help them with their apprenticeship, help them be self-funded so that they can do ministry in that way. So that'll have more details about that. And also, if you need any more details about if you're interested in residency at your own church or any questions from Reliant, you can reach out to us at partner@reliant.org and we'll get back in touch with you. I'll drop that in the chat. But thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. It has been a blessing to be here with you all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.